Yo, Logan, what's up?
Class,
Yeah, class.
studying,
Yeah.
homework.
Wait, so you're a student?
Yeah.
You're a student in Social 118 right now?
Yes.
Oh, dude. All right, man. All right, cool. What'd you think of class yesterday?
It was interesting. It was engaging and it's a class. Not all of them are going to be enthralling, but that's not the requirement of a class.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, and you don't have to say you liked it either, by the way. It doesn't matter. Because I liked it, so and
Yeah.
that's all that really matters. Yeah.
There
But
was there was part of the
wait,
class. Oh,
what
yeah.
did you get? What did you take away from it?
So what I took away from it was that I don't think we talked about critical thinking much at all in that class. Right? We talked about what critical thinking meant for the students that were participating, but we didn't really talk about the difference between regular thinking and critical thinking. I
Ah,
found a lot of the examples that the students listed of examples of critical thinking were just like, to me, like regular thinking, things that you just do as a human that exists and moves through the world, tackling, quote unquote problems you run into on a daily basis.
but those examples, those few examples that people gave were pretty fast, and we got past them
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
yeah,
So, but I'm with you on that. And sometimes I'm careful about, especially in the beginning of the semester, I'm really careful about letting the conversation just sort of go where people are going to take it.
yeah.
Yeah. So, because I have to do that, but I'm 100% with you, man. Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
And then the other thing I noticed was students seemed to have this idea that in class they weren't critically thinking. And to me, right, they talked about, when you're in class, you're just writing down from the board onto your paper, your
Yeah.
professor's just presenting to the board. And at least from my perspective in college, that has happened in a few classes, but a majority of them have been classes where I am engaged, I am asking the professor questions, the professor is, doesn't seem to be irritated answering my questions. There are classes where I have to think actively about the content, because if I just write it down, I'm not going to be
Yeah.
able to do well on my exams.
Yeah. But which classes are those, right? Because you're not, if you have a class of 50 people, not everyone's going to be doing that. Like, you can't do that.
No, but I don't think it's on the professor when you have a class where a significant portion of students aren't super engaged in it, because in a class of 50, that's sort of the expectation. And I see that in classes, so I'm an electrical engineering student. You have
Yeah.
classes which are much smaller, and the classes
Yep.
that are much smaller tend to be classes where students are, the same level of engaged as they are in the 50 plus student
Yeah,
sections.
that's right. That's right. So
So
what's the average what year are you, by the way?
I'm a senior.
So what's like on average when you're taking your upper level engineering EE classes?
Yeah.
What's the average class size?
The average class size, depending on what course it is, the level 400 classes tend to be as low as 17, but up to like
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
And then your 300 level, like core engineering classes, can be up to 100, but mostly are around 60 to 40.
Yeah. So if you want, for example, right? I mean, in your upper level classes with 17, 20, 25 people, you can really engage. And then they're designed, the E classes are really designed to be work around problem solving, right? Because you have to learn that. That's part of
Yeah.
what EE is about at that level. Like, if you didn't get some stuff at the core level, you're not going to be able to engage in the problem solving.
You're not.
And yeah, and your professors know that. But the problem is now when you get to the core classes, a few students can really engage, but then you become the students that raise your hand all the time, and then you can do that, but not everyone can do that. And so then we're stuck in this world of just being like, all right, man, they can get the same grade as you, but without ever engaging at the level at which people really need to engage.
Yeah, but I find that engaging is a decision made on the part of the student. Like
Yeah.
every course I've been in, there has been enough time in the class for students to ask a lot more questions of the professor. Almost every class I'm in is that situation. They just choose or decide not to take advantage of that all the time.
Well, okay, but let me ask
Mm.
you this. Have you taken like intro to psych?
No.
Did you take intro to soc or anthropology or something like
The largest class I took was like Chem 110 or Physics
that? Yeah.
210.
Wait, but you had what'd you take for your gen eds?
I'm taking them all currently.
Oh yeah, what do you
Semesters
have?
all gen eds.
Oh, so that's why you're in this class.
Yeah.
What other classes do you have?
I have alcohol history course. I have a course on.
Oh, wait, you have the class with Kurt,
I don't
right? The
think
alcohol class.
Yeah.
It's anthropology, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but what about that? Like yeah. Oh yeah, okay, right. But but again, like in those classes, like there's not that space. The university has designed this thing that you can't engage. It's like, well, here,
Mhm.
look, you're now talking to me, right?
Yeah.
During office hours, but you can't really do that in class. In these big classes, you can't do that. So you're
But
sort of
I found that all of these courses I've ever been in almost
yeah,
always have office hours that not a lot of people show up to. Or when people do
exactly.
show up to, there is still plenty of time to, converse with your professor. I mean, this class included, right?
Yeah,
Like
I'm
you
with you.
teach a 700 plus person course.
If you watch our videos in Social 118, you know that I'm trying not to impose my own belief system onto students. That what we're trying to do in this classroom, in this space right here, is to give students opportunities to think on their own terms and to understand the ways in which ideas and thoughts that come at them are often slanted in one direction or another. Our sponsor this semester, our very first sponsor, is Ground News. It's the perfect sponsor for this class, and I'm really happy to endorse them, and I'm happy to get behind them. If you subscribe for Ground News using the code in the description, the link in the description, you get 40% off the Vantage plan. That's the plan that we use in here. And I can't say enough how important this is and how valuable it is to have a better understanding of the ways in which news is coming at you and the ideological perspectives that people are taking who are sharing the news. So sign up for Ground News. It's awesome. Like, I hope all of my students sign up for Ground News, actually. I used to have office hours on Wednesday afternoons. So like today, I always have office hours Wednesdays, like 1 in the afternoon. And then eventually I would have to just keep moving that up because so many people came, and sometimes I would start at 11 and I would go till 5 o'clock, and sometimes I'd be there till 6 o'clock, and Lori would be calling me on the phone. She'd be like, dude, have you left your office yet? I'm like, nah, man, I'm coming, man, I'm coming. And then, so it would end up being like 6 to 8 hours of office hours of students just coming in with questions, nonstop questions. And I would just answer the questions. And so if you wanted to come, you could come. And sometimes students would hang out there. I would have, like 6 people in the office, and sometimes it'd be one. Sometimes somebody had something really personal to talk about. So I had to kick everybody out, talk to them. But the students who wanted to engage could really engage. And so I would tend to agree with what Logan's saying, that, well, if you really want
But
to, you
Stu,
can, but the education system is designed, though. Like, look, we have to, it's a mass production machine. And so, the ideal world, if you want to go to a really small school, you can find a small school where you have classes of 15 to 20, every single class. And man, it's just critical thinking left and right. It's cool. But in a mass production machine, you got to figure out how to get these grades out as quickly as possible to as many people as possible, and make it happen. That's kind of what you got to do. So
and
that's
so
unfortunate. Yeah.
would that mean
Go
there's like
ahead,
no
man.
incentive because like you as an instructor, I'm pretty sure like you take responsibility on like building rapport, and like how much there's not much incentive for like professors to maybe build rapport or like establish trust to like or like what responsibility do you put on yourself to make sure those you remove those certain types of boundaries so people feel comfortable to come to you, to roll into office hours. I'm not sure if that's like a part of the
Well,
equation to get students to want to come rather than the ones that are just so engaged, the ones that are more just naturally engaged to come to office hours without
man,
needing any of those extra things. But like what responsibility do professors have to build that trust, to build that rapport, to, for
yeah,
to create a
yeah.
space for students.
Well, okay. So here,
Are we still live? Yes.
you, we're told that you need to meet 2 to 3 hours a week, whatever, for every class. I don't know. I mean, there's certain things that we're told. We're encouraged to have as many office hours as possible. But the problem is for somebody like me in a class that large, it's like, man, you can't even, I can't, I set it up so we get people's class questions addressed as quickly as fast as possible. That's what Julie does. So we do that. But in terms of getting access to me, like, oh my God, it just takes, it takes so I will do it. I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk, but you have to push through it. So Logan, you sound like a guy, like a student who's going to push through and be like,
Well,
no, I gotta talk,
yeah. Well, because I don't know, I'm an in-state student, but I'm paying a whole lot of money to be here,
Yeah.
and I'm thankful I am, and yeah, this should be a good investment for me long term. I've got a job lined up, and I'm happy, but I'm spending a whole lot of money for my classes, and I sort of would hope to get help with them. I would hope to get, a professor assisting me when I have questions about material, and when I have, issues with a homework problem. I expect to be able to,
Mhm.
go to office hours and discuss the issues with that problem set with the professor, because that's what I'm paying for. And so far, I've gotten that at pretty much every class I've taken.
Yeah, well, you'll get it from everybody. You'll be hard pressed to find some professor that will say like, "Hey, go away, you're annoying." And yeah, if you want it, but what happens, man? So whatever happened to you is unique because what happens in this educational system that I have experienced is that people just slowly over time start to tune out and they don't make a demand and they don't even have they don't even know that they could talk to their professors, and if they can talk to them, they don't even know what they would talk to them about. And so then it's just the system-wide tuning out process, and that's where the lack of critical thinking comes in because you just the whole thing just sort of dies, and that's unfortunate. you know. So, yeah, it sounds like you're doing what you should be doing, man. What I would
So
what I would want my kid to be doing.
my question then is, it, if I'm unique, why, like, what makes me unique? Why aren't other students like this? Because if other students were like this, the system would have to be redesigned because professors wouldn't
Yeah,
have enough time to be a professor.
yeah. I I don't know, man. I don't know what makes you unique like that. What makes you say, I I see that at the university, professors, the ability to access these people whose job it is to think about these issues, the ability to access them is the best part of a college education. So I'm going to take advantage of that. Why are you taking advantage of it and so few other students are? I don't know. I don't know. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I really don't know. Yeah, but and mind you, if I went back to the way I used to do this and say, hey, Wednesdays, all day Wednesdays, I'm going to start at 9 in the morning and I'm going to end at 5 o'clock. You can come to my office. I would have people waiting at my door the entire time. I mean, there would be a line of people waiting, because
Yeah.
there's, almost 800 people, right? It's like, okay, they're going to wait. But there would be, but 2/3 of the class or more, 75%, maybe 80% would never, ever show up at my office. They'd just be like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't need that. I get it. I'll listen to this knucklehead in class. And then you got to ask, why wouldn't they show up, man? You know, like, I don't
Yeah.
know why. I don't know why. Huh.
I just think I think that's a interesting question to think about, because I don't know if that's the nature of being a large school or a small school, but like, did we self-select into those categories, or is it, part of a trained response from the environment we are in?
I don't know, man, but what I'm going to predict is it's not surprising. First off, you don't need help with social 19. You'll get an A in 119. That's just for sure. So that's irrelevant, right? You'll get an A in the alcohol class. That's irrelevant. That's not an issue. I can just tell by talking to you, right? It doesn't surprise me that you already have a job. Okay, that you've done what you need to do to go find a job. Okay,
Yeah.
that's not surprising. All right, well, your GPA is probably pretty high. Like, okay, that's not surprising. Yeah, it's just you're kind of unique, and lots of parents would like to think that their child is like you, but the fact is, most students they're just sort of moving along. Yep, just like my mom did with me in school. She often would, if she even asked to look at my report card, she would just be like, "Well, did you pass everything?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I passed." I'm like, okay. The assumption was that my teachers would teach me everything that I needed to know. And I'm like,
Interesting.
no, man, that's not what happens. But my mom she didn't go to college. My dad graduated 8th grade. But he was more like me. He took college classes, but he didn't graduate high school, right? But he never obviously graduated college. And but yeah, people just assume that the school system will do whatever it needs to. What do your parents do, by the way?
My dad, by trade, is an engineer, but he currently works in technology.
Okay.
He's head of the office of the CIO at a company, so he works on project management for technology
Good.
projects.
All right, dude,
And then
that's not surprising to me either, man. Go ahead.
my mom got a degree in geology, then became a pilot, then became a nurse, then got a master's in nursing, and then became a pilot again.
Oh, shit, bro.
Flies
Okay,
for
well, no
Delta now.
wonder you are who you are, man. You know what I mean? I mean, you got your mom way more than your dad. She does this, and then she does that, and then yeah, man, you grew up with that. I grew up with a mother who was an administrative assistant. She was a secretary for somebody. Okay. Um, she was a bookkeeper and type, but she worked out of the home. And my dad had been a salesman selling medical equipment for this company called the McKesson Company. It was a really large medical products company. They still
Yeah.
exist. And but he was like me. He was always he has some patents. So he was an inventor. He was always inventing stuff and doing stuff. And then ultimately he was selling all these medical supplies made of plastics. And then he realized, you know what, man, I could make this myself. So he bought some equipment, taught himself tool and die, bought some machines, bought some property that had buildings on it, put these machines in this one particular building, and he had his own factory where he was making the stuff that he used
This
to
is your
be selling.
father?
That's my dad.
Yeah.
Never having gone to high school, right? But he was like me. He was always thinking outside of a box, like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. And then he had inventions, like he has patents. So
I'm working on one. We'll see how that turns out. With work, we're working on a patent for an automated rail vehicle.
okay, dog. That doesn't surprise me either then. So listen, people aren't like you, man. Your classmates are not like you. Right. And so your question is just like, why aren't they like me? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Why aren't they? Why aren't people more like you? Why don't more people? I don't know, man. I don't know. Doesn't get it. Well, part of it is family, right? You have these two parents they've offered you opportunities. The biggest opportunity they've given to you, is a stable place.
Correct. Yeah.
you got your own room, you have your desk, you have a computer, you've always had that, you have stability. And number two, you've had these two parents that you watch do these things that are really, really cool, especially watching your mom make these
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah, man. When Elijah here, dude, where was your dad when you were, wait, how old? 5?
When I was 5, when I was 0 and 2, my dad was in prison. Yeah, prison.
He was in prison. All right. So
Yeah.
like, okay, but later he got out of prison. So like, yeah, he was
Later,
working.
but
Yeah.
later, yeah, he same ninth grade education, like didn't graduate from high school, got his GED inside of prison, and then worked his way up to a manager at like Eckerd, and then he started training people inside of gyms, and now for the last 20 years, he's had his own personal training business, and
Which is
he's
cool.
thriving. Yeah,
That's
And here
really
you
cool.
are, you're thriving, right? Because you
Yeah.
you have this guy, like you see that. So
yeah.
that's pretty cool.
And
Anyway,
the models in our lives are so important.
oh
Yeah.
man.
The
The model.
the other thing that's always interested me about myself is that I have ADHD, and I have my entire life, and it's a sort of a runs in the family sort of thing. And
Mhm,
I've always wondered if that makes me how I am,
mhm.
or if it's me having it that made me who I am, or
Mm,
if I would have ended up like this had I not had it to begin with, right? Because I've read a whole lot about ADHD, and the likelihood that you graduate from college is substantially lower, and your likelihood of finding a job in a technical field is more difficult, and it's a lower probability of doing it. And I've always wondered, like, if I didn't have it, like,
yeah.
would I do more? Like, what I
Yeah. Who would you be? Is it because of that that makes you who you are? Yeah, that's a really cool question. Dude, the very fact that you're asking those kinds of questions is part of what makes you who you are. So, yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
So
cool.
then, to bring it all back, is that critical thinking?
Yeah, totally, dude. Your brain doesn't stop. Okay.
No,
You're a person whose
unfortunately.
brain doesn't stop. My father's brain didn't stop. Okay.
There was
My brain didn't stop. So
there was the question in class, which was like, could you turn off your brain? Or it was along the lines of that in class yesterday,
yeah,
where it was like, could you turn off your brain, or could you slow it down? Sometimes I want to. Sometimes it's
yeah,
moving too fast, and I need it
yeah,
to chill out.
yeah, yeah. Same here. Yeah, same here. But that's what
Um,
but that's really but that's what makes teaching so cool, right? Like we get to meet so many different people and so many different people who are different from us and similar to us. And I don't put down the students who are not engaged and really thinking in these deeply critical ways. It's like, well, that's what life is. You know what I mean? Most people are not on this earth to be thinking all the time. That's not what we're doing. That's not why we're here. And thank God we're not, because we need people to do a whole wide range of jobs. Right.
yeah.
Mhm.
So like, that's okay. But yeah.
'Cause
Well, good for
as
you.
humans,
Hey,
what
where are
made
you
us
from, by the
special?
way?
I'm
Well,
from
wait.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
You're from Pittsburgh? Wait, what was your
Yeah.
question? Is what made us special is?
As humans, what made us special is we sort of devoted 100 watts of body output to our brains working all the time. That's
Yeah.
sort of what made us unique to begin with, and that's why we need to wear a jacket when we go outside to not be cold.
Yeah,
Most
yeah,
animals have
yeah.
that built in. Most animals don't
Yeah.
need to wear a jacket.
Yeah, yeah. We just got that. Yeah, that's why we're thinking about that stuff.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Well, that's good, man. Good for you, dog. I
Yeah.
appreciate what you're saying, and I really yeah, I appreciate having you in class, man. You'll have to come hop back on office hours at some point.
That's
And
so
for
cool.
sure
Yeah.
100%.
volunteer. Did you apply to volunteer?
I have the page up right now. I'm about to fill it.
All right.
Nice.
Okay. Wait, did I talk to you right after class
Yes,
yesterday?
you did.
Oh, you're the tall guy.
Yes.
The tall one. Dude, how tall are you? Like 6'3"?
I'm just under 2 meters.
Yeah. Right.
6'5.5".
Yeah.
Wow, let's go.
Yeah, I knew my neck was getting sore looking up at you. I had to step back a little bit.
And my neck is bad from looking down all the time.
Yeah, yeah, I'll bet, man. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, listen. Yeah, that's cool. Hey, thanks for hopping on, man. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
course.
thanks, Logan. We might
Yeah.
have to recruit Logan as a facilitator. You know, he's gonna
Yeah, well, he's
facilitate
graduating. He already has a job, dude.
Yeah,
yeah, never mind.
I'm gone soon.
See, his problem
Unfortunately,
with dudes like him is they wait and they take when they take gen eds late in their career, then they stumble upon 119. And then, of course, 119 is more interesting for you, right? Because you've had all this experience.
Yes.
And you're older, you've been thinking about things. And so that means you can really sit back and you trust yourself, right? You'll do fine on these exams. So you can just really sit back and just think.
That's
Yeah.
why I took all my gen eds late, is because my electrical engineering courses are difficult, and not to say that Soch 119 isn't difficult, but it's not as hard as my linear systems class, right?
No, dude, it's not difficult at all. If your memory is pretty decent and your concentration ability is slightly above average, you put things in your just to show up to class twice a week, you're fine. You're doing great. Yeah, but you'll be surprised at how many people can't do it because that's the social because succeeding at a university is more social. There are more social and psychological bumps in the road than intellectual. People don't have the money, so they got to work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, just the emotional pressures of waking up every single day. And yeah.
And I know I'm very lucky that my parents, as long as I keep my grades above a certain mark, they've agreed to help assist, in paying for college and giving me basically an interest-free loan for it. So I'm, extremely grateful for that. And I feel like, to fail class when they've given me that would be to let them down, right?
Dude, yeah, imagine that and let yourself down. Like, you got to take the class over again. But, but I have a lot of students who they struggle, man. They got stuff going on. They can't get out of bed. Well, with my class, if you can't get out of bed at 3 PM, you got a lot going on, man. But
yeah,
but it's hard, man. It's hard. People are struggling. People are feeling stressed. Climate issues, political issues. I mean,
we got the big snowstorm coming.
Yeah, man. People hear that. They're like, oh my God, another problem. And it's hard to be 20 years old. Yeah. All right. Listen, man.
All right.
Logan, be well. Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah,
of
it was
course.
a pleasure, Logan. Thanks.
All right, man.
See you guys.
Okay. All right. Ciao.
Peace.
Bye.
What a cool dude.
That's cool. I like having those conversations. I like meeting students like that.
That should happen more often on here. I feel like we should have like segments. You know what I mean? You have a little spin wheel. Really trick this podcast out.
Dude, let's do it, man. Okay, make that happen.
All right, bet. Let's come up with a plan.